2006, a 14-year-old boy named Evan lived on a farm in North Carolina. It was a pine tree harvestry. Their main living house on the farm was situated right in the middle of 550 acres of perfectly lined up pine trees. They did not have any neighbors nearby, and there was only one road that led into the property. The main house was built on a very slight hill, which meant one side of the house was effectively built on stilts to compensate for the angle. And on that side of the house was the living room. That winter, Evan's cousin came to stay with him on his farm, and because the house did not have any extra bedrooms, Evan and his cousin would have to sleep in the living room. The boys fell asleep around midnight, and then they woke up a couple hours later because they heard Evan's dogs barking way off in the pine trees. Evan's cousin got up off the couch, moved across the room to the window. He's squinting his eyes. Evan looks at him and says, "Hey, what's going on?" And his cousin's like, "I'm pretty sure I see people out there." Evan jumps off the couch and runs over and butts up right next to his cousin so he can look out the window. The moon is very bright that night, so there's good illumination. He's looking out maybe 100 meters when he sees someone's leg, as if they're stepping into the space between a pine tree column. And then a person walks from one row to the next. And after a couple of minutes, they see another leg. It looks like they're moving at an angle closer to the main house. And as they're looking, they see this person emerge again. Now, they're like 20 meters away. They don't know how they were able to move that quickly without being seen. When the leg comes out from behind the pine tree, it stops right in the middle, and it turns and it looks directly at the boys in the window, and then begins running toward them. The boys practically fall over trying to get away from the window. Evan's yelling for his father upstairs, and the boys instinctively just start running around the house, locking every door, shutting every window. Right as Evan's father comes charging down the stairs, he's got his gun in hand and he's like, "What's going on?" And they say, "There's someone out in our property." Their dad charges out the front door. The front door is not on the same wall as the living room. He stays in the porch and he starts yelling, "You come over here, I'm gonna shoot you, get the F away from here." The dad comes back inside and he tells Evan, "Keep an eye out. If you see him again, you let me know." Evan and his cousin, they go back into the living room, and after 5-10 minutes of looking out the window and not seeing anything, they're thinking to themselves, they probably got the message and they're probably gone. So the boys got back into their couches. They did ultimately fall asleep. The next morning when the boys got up, first thing they wanted to do was go out there, and they're looking around and they find some footprints. They start following the footprints back towards the property, and they realize there were two people out here. And even worse is they followed them all the way up to the house, and there were two different circles of footprints that stopped right underneath the living room window. When Evan and his cousin were up at that window looking out, there's a good chance that one or two strangers were tucked up against the side of the house, and they would not have seen them because of the angle out of the living room window. Anybody that was tucked up along the side, they'd be in a blind spot. And then for sure, after Evan and his cousin were sleeping, there were two strangers probably pulling themselves up to look inside. Evan would say, following this event, his cousin refused to ever come back over his house for a sleepover.